Today on The Rocks, I'm excited to chat with Sonia Scarselli, Vice President of BHP's newly formed Xplor program, about the role of entrepreneurship in the mining industry and why disruption and innovation are becoming more important. As you listen to this episode, if you're a disruptor or innovator as Sonia describes, please consider applying to the Xplor program through the end of October. Our industry desperately needs new ideas and new concepts to help us meet the future's demand for minerals. Xplor was recently established in June of this year to seek out innovative and breakthrough mineral exploration opportunities through a portfolio of early-stage, pre-commercial startups and work with them to identify concepts, leverage data, and test new opportunities at a fast pace. This new organization is designed to increase BHP's access to a larger set of prospects with a global footprint, thereby positioning BHP to continuously provide the resources required to meet the needs of a changing world. Since joining BHP in 2012, Sonia has served in several commercial and operational leadership roles, including as head of Algeria, manager of exploration for Trinidad and Tobago, and most recently, in 2019, she was appointed vice president of exploration and appraisal, where she led, developed, and operationalized business strategies and commercial plans to deliver a global portfolio of growth options. Sonia started her career in the oil industry at ExxonMobil UK in a number of exploration and geology roles, and she holds a master's degree in geological science, a PhD in geology, and an MBA. Sonia also serves in leadership and advisory roles at Deep Energy Capital, the American Cancer Society, and the American Association of Petroleum Geologists. With that, pour a glass of tea or coffee, or in my case, Peerless Bourbon from Kentucky on the rocks, and let's dive in. Well, Sonia, thank you so much for coming on The Rocks. It's great to have you here, and I'm excited to chat with you today.
Hi, Emily. Thank you so much for having me today on The Rocks. I'm very, very excited to be with you this morning.
Wonderful. So what are you drinking today?
Well, I have my theme. I'm a rock climber, and so I went for my finger strength cup that is filled of one of my preferred tea, which is acai and green tea.
Wonderful. Oh, that's cool. So you're a rock climber.
Mm-hmm.
That's very cool.
Yes.
Well, I'm not being as good as you. You're drinking tea. I'm drinking bourbon as usual. But today, since we're talking about entrepreneurship and the importance of entrepreneurship in the mining industry, I have a bottle of bourbon that a female entrepreneur, close friend of mine, Nicole, got me called Peerless. I thought it was just a great name to go along with our topic. So Peerless is a Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey that she brought home for me from an HR conference. She runs an HR company. So I think it's a great thing when you host a podcast and people bring you bourbon from all over the world.
Absolutely.
Hopefully it's a good thing and not a sign of an issue. But I'm excited to chat to you today. Well, so I wanted to kick it off because you run BHP's Xplor program, which is really cool and innovative, and we're going to get into that a little bit later in the episode. But I think why it's so unique is it really focuses on entrepreneurship in the mining industry and finding an opportunity to pull more innovative thought, new ideas, new thinking into the space. And I personally think that we don't have enough of that in the industry. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about how you see entrepreneurship and the mining industry.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if I think about the mining industry in general, I see as an environment being quite insular in terms of industry and activities. We tend to talk with each other. We tend to live in our own space, and there is a little bit less influence and impact from the external world. But as we're looking at the evolution and revolution of what's happening in the external environment, sort of there is a need for mining to adapt to a much faster pace and disruption, both in technology and innovation. And that's where I think a more entrepreneurial mindset, more entrepreneurial activities can definitely come into the industry and shake us a little bit and shake us in a positive way so we can open the door to innovation, to technology. And there are so many great things that are happening out there in the external space and environment, and bringing fresh mindset, not just in the idea generation, but also in the way we are doing our business, where we can shift some of the paradigms and the dogmas of a very insular industry, doing business with ourselves, into an industry that can be more attractive to young people and young generation, more nimble, more agile, and just a faster pace. And the concept of entrepreneurship, it's really important because we want these people with these ideas, new generation coming in and take the risk to disrupt our ways of working. So that's why we start to see a little bit of that, but we're not there yet. There's plenty of opportunity in the space.
And I think from my experience as an entrepreneur in the mining industry and the exploration industry, I think part of that is because of the long-term investment nature of what we do, right? It can be hard if you're coming in with maybe an entrepreneurial way of thinking about geology, for example, or the way certain deposits have formed. It takes so long to get something through investment and development and get a mine built, right, to prove out your theory, that sometimes there's just not enough support through that whole process for an entrepreneur to kind of get there. And I think that's also where the way that we invest in exploration is also from several decades ago, right? I mean, the way that juniors work is not really in sync with the pace of the way things happen these days.
That's exactly right. I look at this as a building block. There is the exploration building block of the life cycle of resources. There is the exploration building block, there is the development, and there is the production. And to me, each of these stage requires to de-risk or reduce enough uncertainty to be able to move to the next stage. And to do that, usual what we do all the work that is needed to be done. We check all the box, and that's take a lot of time and a lot of investment. That's why we see like 5 to 10 years to move from the exploration space to the development, and then another 10 years on the development phase. That's just an expansion, a very long expansion of timeline, and also very long period for investing. So the returns come much farther in the value chain. And on my mind, especially on the exploration, we have the ability to shift that thinking and think, what is the minimum amount of exploration activities that I need to do and finance in a way that I can quickly know, is there a commercial opportunity there or not? And that to me is where, at least on my case, a lot of the focus should be, because that's what can reduce timeline and pace quite significantly.
Yeah, and I think with what's going on in the world right now, with the transition to a low carbon economy, the green economy, there's so much more metal that we need. And those are also slightly different metals than what we've needed in the past for our world to grow and develop. And so we need these things like now, right? To have electric vehicles, solar panels, wind turbines, batteries to store it all. Like there's this huge supply and demand gap that the industry has to figure out how to meet. That from my perspective, what I see, it's happening much faster than it has in the past, right? And we've got to kind of adjust in order to keep up with the pace of other technology innovation.
This is absolutely right. When we think about some of the very daunting plans that most countries and companies put forward by 2030 and 2050, we don't have the luxury to wait the next 10 years to find the new resources. In fact, some of our internal work is inconsistently with external data show that we need to increase the supply of nickel 4 times what it's been in the past 30 years, copper 4 times what it's been in the past 30 years. And it's simple said than done, because to do that, we need to find the new resources. And to find new resources in an era where we haven't been very successful from an exploration point of view, it really meant to completely shift our way of thinking of mineral exploration and our ways of working. And if I think about that, there are 3 aspects. There is the mindset, new ideas, new concept, taking a little bit more technical geological risk and test those. There has to be a new way of investing. We can't invest like we've been investing in the past because it's just too slow and it takes too long. And then what are the new technology that we need to embrace and adapt in a way that the three things put together can allow us to find new resources in a much faster pace, in a more agile way. We have to bring those resources to the market. It's not good enough to make a future plan for energy transition without knowing how we are going to fuel that energy transition.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when we look at the media, what we also see is there's a lot of attention paid to things like lithium and rare earths, things that, are important, but are kind of a little sexier. And there's a lot less attention paid to things like nickel and copper. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about why those are so important to this energy transition.
Absolutely, and you're exactly right. We hear a lot about the new battery generation on lithium and the usage of rare earth and so on. But the reality is what does really wire and underpin all the electric vehicle, the solar panel, windmill, what's really behind all of these new energy type of sources, it is copper. Copper is really wiring all these new electric invention or electric activities. And then nickel, it's fundamental for building batteries. And if we think about where many of those resources have been discovered in the past 20 years, well, not that many. The mines that we are developing and producing today are quite old mines, and they're not going to be sufficient. They're not going to be enough for increasing the production of electric vehicle and solar panel and so on. And we see that shortage already in the manufacturing industries. And everybody that has put an order on a new Rivian or a new Tesla, just to make some names, they're all waiting for the backlog of their cars because there are not enough resources to do batteries and to create new cars. So that is how important it is to have this car. And right now, I think that we are not even like at the 100%. I think we are at the maybe 10% of electrification around the world. If we think about growth of population and growth of demand, we just need to, as I mentioned before, to produce 4 times the amount of resources that we are doing today, especially in copper and nickel.
Yeah. And that's where I think also, as you mentioned, the financing structure and changes in that are so important, because there's also a space in the mining industry where you add value to your deposit by adding ounces, right? And for those listening who aren't familiar with that, what that means is a company may have done enough drilling to have a pretty good understanding that an asset is economic, but rather than move forward to put it into development or production, they continue to drill, right, to further define the resource. And I think from what I see in the supply-demand gap, we've got to encourage some of those companies to begin development and production earlier, even if there is still more of the asset to define, because we frankly need the metal to come into the production pipeline.
That's absolutely right. And I think one thing that hasn't really been leveraged quite enough on the mineral industry is a sort of a phase approach. To your point, we don't need to have defined the full extent of the resources, but if we can reach a minimum viable commercial range or a size of the resources, we can start to develop and produce that portion. And while that is ongoing, we can continue the drilling, but do that in a phase approach in a way that we don't wait 20 years and all the drilling happen before moving forward for the development. So that's something that we haven't really tapped into in the mineral industry. So it will be very important to start to look into that concept as well. Similarly is on the investment and the front end, on the exploration. The way it works right now, especially on the junior space, there is a little bit of work, technical work done to prove the potential existence of a resource enough so that they can, the juniors can raise some capital from the market and go into the next phase where they test and drill a little bit more, and then they go back and raise more money. This process can take years, and we don't have years. We want to know immediately, do you have a resource or not?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And that's where, I think I'd love to have you share with the listeners a little bit about the Explore program, which I think is a great solution that BHP has brought in for some of these problem sets that will at least change the game and try something new. Could you tell us a little bit about it?
Yes, absolutely. So if we step back on our beginning of the conversation was around the entrepreneurial mindset and how to bring more of an entrepreneurial way of thinking into the mineral industry. So really what Explore is for BHP, it is an accelerator. So we are leveraging the concept of accelerator incubator type of investment that we see on the technology space on the tech world into the mining. And what we're doing within the Explore program, we're taking early stage exploration companies. They have a great exploration idea. They might have a lot of geologic risk. So there is a lot to define. And the lack of capital and the lack of other aspects that they need, whether it's operation or business. And we take in our program, we support them, we finance them, we help them to build a project plan, an execution plan around their idea. And we finance them to go on the field and test that idea, to test like a minimum viable concept. So we do that in a very different way. That is not really mineral industry. It's more innovative, is more focusing on the concept and taking the risk, financing and knowing since the first investment if we're going to have a discovery or not. So this way, what it does, it allows us to look at way more opportunities and ideas that we would do in a traditional manner. But it will also allow us through the investment structure that we are bringing on the table to avoid that piecemeal and small incremental investment they take years for an exploration concept to become a commercial. We just shorten that and accelerate that within a couple of years instead of 5 to 10 years.
Yeah. No, I think that's so fascinating. And I really hope that what it does is allow basically a leapfrogging approach where, like you said, you don't have to do this incremental testing and raising money and then going and testing a little bit more, but allow folks with really creative and innovative concepts to kind of jump right to it. So what types of companies are you looking for to apply? Because I know your deadline is the end of October. So if anyone's listening that's a fit for this, you can go on and apply through the end of October. Who should be thinking about doing this or who should apply?
So we are, if I can put the ideal candidates in three buckets, we're looking for three very different group of candidates. We are open to companies, early stage exploration. They have just gone through IPO, so that's fine. They have a interesting exploration concept, a new idea. They are looking to raise capital to go and test their new ideas. They potentially have the land, the property already acquired or secured. And what they really are looking at is the financial aspect and some of the technical support on the field. So we definitely are welcoming this type of companies and we will help them what they need. We're also looking from a completely opposite spectrum, individuals with an entrepreneurial mindset that they never run a company. They always wanted to, but they never found a platform that can help them and support them to build a company around their concept. They might come from academia, from a research center. It doesn't really matter, but they come with a very interesting new exploration concept on the mineral space, a new mineral system thinking, and they have a view where they want to test this concept. And when I say a view, I mean a geographic area that they can go and test the concept. So we're helping them. Those are perfect candidates because we're helping them to build a company, a startup around their idea. We provide them operation support, financial support, business support, and also technical support through our network of advisors, mentors, external supply, and so on. So we definitely help them to get ready to go on the field and test their idea. And then a little bit in the middle, also companies, they are pre-IPO, but they're not a first timer in the exploration industry of the mining sector. They have already run exploration activity in the past, and what they need the financial support, they need some of the operational support or capabilities, as well as maybe capture the tenement. So they need some legal and above ground again, support or mentoring. Yeah. So we'll definitely provide that to them. So three very different group of candidates. The intent of doing this way is because we wanted to hear the disruptive ideas. So that's why we are opening up to people that are not the usual suspect in the mineral industry, but they come very fresh with fresh eyes, a fresh concept. So we will definitely disrupt that. But then we know that there are a lot of very smart entrepreneurs on the mineral industry, especially on the exploration, that they have these very cool ideas, but they haven't been able to raise the capital because the risk profile of some of these concepts is too high.
Yeah, and I know certainly I've heard from folks, the challenge in the typical fundraising mechanism is people want to know that it's succeeded somewhere else before, right? So yeah, I mean, it just kind of works against these innovative ideas sometimes. So I really applaud you all for doing this. I think it's so important, and I just want to echo that the capital is non-dilutive as well. I think that's really important for folks, right? And should really take that into consideration. And so when people apply, I assume there's a bit of a discussion. If people are of interest to you, you'll come back to them and you can kind of help refine what they're looking to do as well. It's not like just a blind send in your proposal and then you're it or you're out.
That's exactly right. So there is definitely a bit of discussion, and we are accepting applications through the month of October, and then the month of November will be really for us to go through the application and the opportunity to call back the candidates and have a conversation with them. And even for the successful candidates that get accepted into the program, during the program that can be anything between 3 to 6 months. And it is 3 to 6 months because we want to be flexible with each individual candidate. We wanted to make sure we are supporting them at the best. So if they don't need to be 6 months with us, they don't have to. But that is another opportunity to refine not just the concept, but really more the logistic of the activities. So if we can accelerate them further, we will accelerate them further.
Well, I'm so excited to watch this go through, because I really do think it's the first program I'm aware of that's done this. There have been some, sort of accelerator type programs in the technology space in Australia in particular. I think of their METS Ignited program, right? But nothing on the exploration side. So I'm really excited to watch it move forward. And, I know you came from the oil and gas industry, from the petroleum industry, and what have you been able to pull out of that background and apply to the mining industry? What kind of lessons learned have you seen that helped you build this program out?
There are two main aspects that I think I definitely want to bring into the program and help those companies thriving. The first one is on the subsurface and the geology, thinking in the oil and gas, we tend to think a lot in terms of petroleum system. So we tend to think from the big picture down to the prospect scale. And when we get down to this prospect scale is what's going to be the key element of the petroleum system that we need to test, that is going to tell us if there is there's going to be a discovery or not. So really focusing on a very specific element on the testing campaign. I want to bring a little bit of that mindset into the mining. So thinking in terms of a mineral system, from the big picture down to the small picture, both in terms of idea generation and concept, but also we don't have to go and drill everything on the field. What is the minimum drilling campaign that we need to do that allow us to define do we have something or not? So that's something that I definitely want to bring there. And the other piece is the pace. Like in the oil and gas industry, we've gone through our own process and probably we were couple of decades ago with the same paradigm around the pace and financing, especially on the exploration side, how we could accelerate, how we could do faster, how we could be more nimble. And so we disrupted quite a bit that part of exploration. And these days, instead of taking 10 years, we're taking a couple of years from getting into the license to knowing if you have a discovery or not. So I wanted to be able to bring that mindset of being much faster and more nimble and just focusing on the right things rather than doing everything. With that, the investment is important because we need to be able to provide enough capital that we can do that upfront instead of having these incremental activities that do not help with acceleration and agility.
No, I've seen this firsthand working in oil dominant economies like Algeria as an example, where Algeria, huge petroleum industry, and the government, the permitting, everything was really set up for big companies to come in and do large scale, system scale exploration, right? And then zero in on the areas that would produce. And when I first started going there and talking to them about diversifying into mining, it's so flip-flopped from how the mining industry works, where you literally have prospectors that go out, and of course they have geologic context, and they look at the big picture to prioritize where they want to go. But in mining, you do have the prospectors and the juniors, the smallest teams, go out and do the exploration, and that really forces them to be local focus instead of like district scale or model scale. I think it's such an important difference.
It is absolutely, and I think that to me can definitely this way of working, it can definitely unlock more opportunities and more ideas, and really test those concepts that otherwise will not be tested with the current system. Because by coming into the BHP Xplor program, what is the advantage is actually what you just said. You're going to have the big company. They can look at from a much more a bigger picture, more holistically, the entire region, the entire opportunity, helping the more early stage junior prospectors to put that their opportunity into a more of a regional context. And that to me is going to enable much more opportunities. It's going to enlarge our footprint, our exploration of footprint space from a global point of view.
And I really think it's a great model for making sure that good capital gets to really strong, promising projects, because there is so much capital that I hate to say wasted because it sounds intentional. It's not like waste and abuse, right? But there's a lot of money that's raised in order to do all of those incremental steps that could be better leveraged if we could leapfrog some of them, right? With a larger upfront investment at the larger scale, and then jump in kind of on the more promising targets. I think with the gap that we have in capital that we need to build all of these mines to meet that demand supply gap, it's going to be a really interesting model to see how it works. So I think it could really speed things up.
Absolutely. And it's going to leapfrog some of the investment, but also it allows to focus more on concept that the market as it is today would not finance. Because today, especially today, yes, there is capital, but there isn't as much capital as we've seen in the past, despite the need of new resources induced into the market. The capital in the exploration space is very limited. We see more capital going into improvement on the operational side. And the capital that is available today, it just goes to the usual suspect. It goes to the same firms, the same people, and for ideas that are not that breakthrough. They're not new concept. They're something that is more well known, and there is a perception that there is a lower risk profile. So that's this way of financing really shift the investment in taking a little bit more risk and early on. Also because we invest from a portfolio point of view, so we're going to have a portfolio of opportunities. And the risk profile of a portfolio is very different than the risk profile of an individual option that we're looking at.
Now, how would you define disruption in this space then? Like, what does that look like to you, a disruptive idea or concept?
So it started with the geology. It could look like a new way of understanding how deposits are accumulated, how, for example, fluid migrate in such a way that we can predict better where we're going to find a vein of copper or nickel or whatever critical resources that help us to predict it in a much more systematic way rather than only observation. So what we have today, we have a lot of observation. We go on the field, we take a little bit of sample, we make an observation, and we just move from there. So breakthrough to me is observation is on one side, but what is the deductive piece? What is the predictive aspect that we can identify through more of a holistic concept that we can go from region A to region B, where there are similar characteristics, and we're going to find actually the same accumulation or the same attributes of accumulation. So that to me is one concept. The other aspect can be linked to not just the geology, but it can be a marriage between the geology and the technology. So it could be a new, faster way to integrate data that can help us to identify and predict geologic features in a more holistic and integrated way. That could be something that is disruptive as well. And then we can disrupt the industry through thinking about drilling at depth, going much deeper than what we've done now, and looking for new technology that can allow that. I think that even the investment side can be disruptive if we change the way we are investing, like we are doing with our program. We can be disruptive in accelerating concept and ideas that they would have not been invested on in the past.
No, I think I see how all of those to me are disruptive technologies or approaches that may meet resistance currently because it's different than how people have been doing things and are doing things. And, true disruption, there's always a little bit of resistance, right? That's why the system gets off kilter. So I couldn't agree more. I think those are all super important. And on that topic, I've been asking all of my guests a little bit in the same vein, if you could wave your magic wand and change one thing about the mining industry, what would you change?
So I would change really the mindset of collaboration, flexibility, and integration. Right now, everybody does their own thing, and there is little communication on solving like bigger scale problems and concept. I think if there was a little bit more sharing and collaboration, we can actually all of us in the mining industry benefit from it and become better at what we are doing.
Wonderful. Well, cheers to that. And thank you so much for coming on the rocks. And I look forward to having you back on to talk about how the program went.
Cheers to that. Thanks a lot for having me here today. Thank you.
Thanks.